Look around. Almost everything you see is built on a foundation of refined metal. But long before any of it can be shaped, heat-treated, or welded into a massive structure, we have to start at the absolute foundation. So let's dive right into this explainer and look at the crazy chemistry behind the materials that build our modern world. Seriously, how do we turn a literal pile of dirt into a skyscraper? To understand that, we have to look at the invisible first step of the metal's supply chain. This all happens way before a metal can be shaped or welded. First, we've got to figure out how to pry it from the earth. Here's the roadmap for today. We're going to look at unlocking metals from ores, forging iron and steel, checking out some green alternatives, extracting copper and aluminum, and finally, what we do with all the leftovers. All right, jumping into Section 1, unlocking metals from ores. See, the core problem right out of the gate is that metals and ores are stubbornly, and I mean stubbornly, locked up. They're chemically bound to oxygen, sulfur, or other elements. This is exactly why mineral processing has to happen first. By concentrating those valuable minerals right up front, we massively reduce the sheer volume of dirt that needs intense chemical treatment later. And that brings us to extractive metallurgy. Think of it as the ultimate scientific superhero, swooping in to break those chemical bonds and unlock the pure metals trapped inside naturally occurring ores. It's an entire branch of metallurgy dedicated just to recovering usable metal from raw rock. Let's move to Section 2 and check out our first extreme recipe, forging iron and steel. When it comes to iron, our go-to extractive tool is smelting. At its core, we're talking about brute force heat mixed with a chemical reducing agent to literally bust the metal out of its oxygen prison. The journey here is pretty fascinating, and the blast furnace is the undisputed king. Step 1 starts in that massive blast furnace, where a processed coal called coke burns. It acts as both a fuel and a reducing agent, generating carbon monoxide that chemically strips oxygen right off of the iron oxide. Step 2 leaves us with a highly carbonized molten metal called pig iron, but it's got way too much carbon. So Step 3 takes that pig iron into a basic oxygen furnace. We blast pure oxygen directly through the molten metal to burn off that excess carbon, and boom, refined usable steel. But hey, what if we want to ditch that ancient carbon-heavy recipe? Welcome to Section 3, green alternatives for steel. Check out this stark contrast on this slide. On the left, you've got the old-school blast furnace, relying heavily on raw iron ore and carbon-rich coke. But on the right, electric arc furnaces. These things are wild. They use ridiculously powerful electric arcs to melt recycled scrap steel directly. No raw iron ore, no blast furnace required. They run entirely on scrap as their primary feedstock. Another amazing alternative is direct reduction. This method uses natural gas, or get this, hydrogen, to chemically reduce iron ore without even melting it. You're left with a solid product called direct reduced iron. The huge takeaway here is that when this process swaps out carbon-based agents for hydrogen, it becomes an awe-inspiring pillar of the green steelmaking revolution happening right now. All right, let's pivot to Section 4, extracting copper and aluminum. While the basic principles of separating a metal from its ore are similar, the specific recipes shift dramatically for non-ferrous metals. For copper, you generally start with froth flotation, then smelt it down to an intermediate product called copper matte, which gets further converted to yield blister copper. But aluminum? Totally different ballgame. Aluminum oxide is way too chemically stable to care about traditional carbon-based smelting. The genius workaround for aluminum is the Hall-Héroult process. We swap out the chemical reducing agents for a massive zap of electrical current. It's an electrolytic method that essentially electrocutes the molten aluminum oxide to literally force the aluminum and oxygen apart. Because this process is 100% reliant on a continuous, massive electrical current, it completely dictates the map of the industry. It's so electricity intensive that you'll almost always find these giant aluminum smelters parked right next to abundant, low-cost power sources like massive hydroelectric dams. The chemistry literally decides the geography. Now for Section 5, refining and reusing byproducts. Once we extract the metal, it needs a final polish. Refining removes those final stubborn impurities to hit specific purity levels. You basically got two main paths. On the left, electrolytic refining uses electrical current in a solution to dissolve impure copper and deposit highly pure copper. On the right, if you're building a spaceship or a microchip, you rely on vacuum refining and other specialized techniques to get that extreme, flawless purity. But wait, we have to talk about the leftovers. After all this intense smelting, we're left with a huge amount of a non-metallic byproduct called slag. It holds all the separated impurities. In the past, the sheer mountainous volume of this stuff was mind-boggling. We literally had hills of waste to deal with. Now, though, our entire perspective is shifted. Slag is no longer just waste. It's incredibly valuable. It gets widely repurposed into vital infrastructure materials. We're talking cement production, road materials. We literally use the leftovers of steelmaking to pave the very roads that transport the finished steel. How cool is that? So, bringing it all together, extractive metallurgy is the absolute bedrock of the metal supply chain. It scientifically transforms stubborn geological rocks into the perfect refined metals that literally every other manufacturing process depends on. Which leaves us with one final fascinating question that perfectly tees up our next explainer. Now that we have this incredibly pure, refined metal, what actually happens to its internal structure when we apply heat to weld it back together? We spent all this incredible energy tearing these elements apart, so what happens when they rejoin? It's a crazy structural shift, and we'll dive exactly into how that works next time.